Salut!
Hey!
All right.
Welcome back to the Good, the Bad, and the Just Plain Standard podcast, where we provide you with our informed opinions on movies we watch together. We are your hosts,
Adam.
Anouk.
and Yann. Today is all about Suffragette.
Starring.
Anne-Marie Duff, Grace Dotter, Jeff Bell, Carrie Mulligan, Amanda Lawrence, Shelley Longworth, Ben Whishaw,
Romola Garai.
Romola Garai, thank you, and Helena Bonham Carter.
Apologies to any listeners. I just punched the mic by complete accident.
It's fine. I fucked up her name.
Jingle. In a world where voice trailer guys didn't prepare any trailer, one wee girl must stand alone. This winter, you will understand why. You will understand why. Rated R. Oh, hi, Molly. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Hello, I'm an actor friend that was invited. I'm just going to state the obvious.
I quite like
Hello.
every episode. Yann's jingles are like completely different, and every week I'm like, oh god, what's it going to be this week? I think that might be your best one. We're just like, bollocks to this. I'm just saying, hey, how are you?
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Very pleased to be here.
Yeah, good to have you.
Okay, so yeah, today all about Suffragette. So I invited you for two reasons, because in our little private chat a few weeks ago, I think I noticed that you said that you have a Suffragette ancestor you just discovered.
I do. It was my Christmas surprise. Well, not really, kind of. It like came out casually over dinner. And I was like, how is that something you just slip into the conversation? Like, by the way, your great aunt Alicia was a suffragette. I'm like, oh, sweet. Why didn't I know about this? But
That is so cool.
How crazy.
Yeah, you would think with the amount of like history you do at school, they would probably slip it in like, oh, I'm doing a project on the suffragettes. You got any information that we could use? No, no, Molly, we don't.
I know, especially considering change at the fringe was
yeah.
all to do with the suffrage
Yeah.
movement. I'm like, I don't know why it wasn't mentioned.
Nick would have loved that. It's like, oh, your ancestors are suffragette. Wow.
Tell me. So basically, the way it came out was that Emmeline Pankhurst came to Glasgow to speak at some sort of rally. And what happened? Basically, the crowd were getting restless. So I think they were starting to get quite kind of, we're going to throw some shit.
It's typical Glasgow audience.
I know. And she was one of the women who went up to the stage and were like, by the way, you need to come down now. Like, you're in danger. And they kind of bundled her away to safety. But how cool is that? My great aunt Alicia was a suffragette.
That's too cool.
That is-
That is V cool.
Just especially after watching that film as well, like it's just
I
like
know.
it just fired me up. I was just so passionate and angry after I watched that film. I was just like,
I know.
I think that is a testament to Glasgow audiences, because I used to watch like loads of these old entertainers, like variety show people talk about like how it was in Britain. Oh, I should explain to American listeners. Variety show is essentially America's Got Talent is like a variety show now that you would kind of have, where comedians, ventriloquists, jugglers, puppet masters, whatever they're called, puppeteers, puppet masters, sorry, puppeteers, impressionists, all these sort of things would go around different parts of the country and perform to venues, and everyone was terrified of Glasgow because it was like the hardest venue to play ever. Like, Scotland was difficult, but Glasgow was the worst. So I quite like the fact that it's like, even for suffragettes, it was difficult as well.
Yeah.
oh yeah, for sure. I can
Even when it's a really important issue, Glasgow's like, Gaff, we want the ventriloquist on.
Do we know how Scotland took the suffragette movement?
I don't think we do.
It's not
interesting.
documented
You
don't
as
he-
well, no.
You don't hear about it anywhere near as much, do you?
No.
No.
It'd be interesting to know if they were better than England or worse, or I don't know, like how.
There wouldn't be a Scottish government yet, so it would kind of be a UK-based movement.
Yeah.
Scottish Parliament wouldn't be a thing in 1912, 18 odd to 1912.
But there'd be women
Oh, yeah, for sure.
kind of
Yeah, of
on
course,
the front
yeah.
line.
Yeah, well, I think there was definitely a culture of it. Because she certainly wasn't one of kind of, she wasn't a lone wolf or anything.
No.
There was definitely a group, an active group. There was reason for her to come to Glasgow, I suppose. There must have
Yeah,
been reason for her to travel to Glasgow to speak. So I think there must have been some sort of,
That's quite yeah.
This would have been like 19.
The film's in 1912. Suffragettes movement is basically 1910s onwards because there was obviously the other campaigns, the peaceful protests for years.
That's about 50 years they were campaigning peacefully.
Well, ever since I remember studying history, and shout out to BBC Bitesize for going under, but I have some notes from my old school days that I found on Bitesize. Because I studied for history British politics between 1850 and 1930, and essentially as soon as men got the vote, which was around after 1850s, when it was still like the case that you stood in a Times Square and said who you were voting for, even then women were starting to go, right, so can we get it? So ever since it was extended to from landlords of, if you owned, this is amazing by the way, if you owned property over the cost of £10 you could vote. I'm like, what a world you must have been living in if you could buy a house for 10 quid.
£10 was definitely a lot more than it is now.
I was going to say, I wonder how.
Yeah, inflation works for that one. And then it went to if you rented property if your rent was over a £5, so then you got the vote. But again, no women. And then even from that, it evolved to secret ballots. So it changed because it used to be the case that you could just threaten or bribe to weigh who you wanted in Parliament. And that changed. But even still, throughout history of those times, there were women campaigning saying, why can't we vote? And it was like...
It's interesting that didn't come with society. It was just like immediately when men got to vote, women were like, what about us? It wasn't just like a societal change of like, oh, actually, do you know what? Maybe I could vote. It was like always... It
would always be, everyone wants to vote apart from landowners. But then it would be like, okay, men can vote. And then when the women would go, hang on, why are we not allowed to vote? So that would evolve from that, I would imagine.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned money because Romola Garai's character in the film... There's a scene where she gets taken in with, I think, maybe 5 or 6 other women for civil disobedience or whatever. And he's come to bail her out because she's, they're well-to-do. And she tries to get him to bail the rest of the women out and he won't. And she says to him, it's my money. So he's obviously married into her money.
Yeah.
But
it's his now.
It's his now.
Aye, but you my wife and that money's mine now.
I don't think he spoke like
no.
Get back home, make sandwich, love.
That's more Ben Whishaw.
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah.
Sonny.
Yeah.
Poor Sonny. I do feel sorry for Sonny.
Well, he's a victim of circumstance, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's true.
And the whole adoption thing of the son is just too sad because it's like, and you could kind of see it happening. Like when, for example, she tries to like play with her son and she's like, you've still got your nightshirt on. It's like, a man has no idea how to look after his son without a woman there. Especially
in this time, because that was very much the era of like men would have to. The idea would be men work, women stay at home, but the reality of it was that men and women had to work because there was such a poor environment.
And we and we were paid less, and I that's probably where it stopped. That like it wasn't about men working and women staying at home and women wanting more, which of course they did. It was also women working as well, and it wasn't just, and then had to keep home and also look presentable, and like there's so much pressure for a 1912 woman.
It is the same, I think, because I remember watching recently Battle of the Sexes, which is Emma Stone and what's his face? Stephen Carell, yeah, which is the whole Billie Jean King, the tennis player, playing I can't remember his name in the film, but as I was number one tennis player male, because he's like wanted to make money off this idea of like women can't be good tennis players, because the fact in the film that it's like the women players got like nothing. It was hee-haw. So I think it always starts off in that film, especially it's about money, but really it's equality. And at the end of the day, people always mistake that you want more money for the fact, no, we don't want more money. We want the same money for the same job.
Yeah, it's not about like we're not a threat to you.
It's not the fake feminism that I think I probably believed when I was 15, 16. This kind of, I'm not a feminist, I'm an egalitarian.
Whatever that means.
And then you grow up a little bit and you go, oh, I was fed the lie.
Oh yeah, me too. Like feminism is like a bad thing, and it's like man hating.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, yeah, man hating is just the worst thing that it could ever be put on an actual feminist, because it's like, I don't hate a man, I fucking live with one.
Well, there was I think I probably felt that way because there was a viral photo or something going around social media years and years and years ago. And I remember it was this girl basically saying that she didn't need feminism because, and all of these things that feminism was actually geared towards, you know. Yeah. And there's a lot of I've forgotten my train of thought now.
I was
Welcome to my world. 25 episodes and I was halfway through. I'm like, what was I saying again?
And I think now we're dealing with something that's really interesting, because we're allowed to do everything, but that doesn't mean that we are brought up in a world where we feel like we can. So I think men have this weird, I'm saying men, women too, actually, have this warped thing of like, yeah, but you're allowed to be a banker, you're allowed to marry, you're not, you don't have to be a housewife, like I'm not forcing you to do anything. It's like, yeah, but like, do you realize
patterns of behavior wouldn't suggest that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's not about, you know, women can't be MPs, but there are much less MPs because of something.
I mean, look at how many, I mean, I know when I was younger, my parents, even with toys, I had baby dolls. And baby dolls and for girls and cars for boys, they came about in the Victorian era because that was a kind of preparatory way of saying this is what you will do when you grow up. You'll be a mum, or you will drive a train or whatever. And it's interesting that they haven't really changed. I mean, there's kind of Lego and so on, but you know, you still see little girls out on the street with a little pram and a baby,
like a Polly
and a
Pocket
baby
or
doll.
something like that.
Yeah, but it's just an attitude that you don't really think about being a problem, but it actually is. When
you think about it, I think about when my mum and dad told me, because it's when in secondary school you get to do these things you never got at primary, like techie, like you can do like craft and design, and you get to do home economics. But when my mum and dad were at school, the boys got to do like woodwork and metalwork, right? And the women had to do sewing and home economics. So they don't get the choice to do either. I'm like, that's like, why?
This
and even,
isn't that long ago as well.
And that's probably about in this. No, my dad would have been at secondary school in the end of the 60s, 70s, and my mum would have been the same, probably end of 60s, 70s. So yeah. That's, 40, 50 years ago this is going on.
And it just reminded me of I think it's called the Wherein rule of living or something that Navy officers have when they are at the training school. And it's basically stuff in which you can read, well, if your wife is, if you're in a uniform, your wife is in the pram, is like pushing the pram, and you have to make sure that you're like 5 steps behind, so you're not seen next to her.
That's still a thing.
Yeah. It's I don't. When you're in uniform, I guess it's it's a thing they get when they train. It's quite fascinating book.
Oh
I jacked a PDF version of this, which is quite funny. Yeah. So I also get you in, but you touched on that because you were in Change 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess in your preparation, you didn't take into account the fact that your aunt was a suffragette. So how did you prepare?
Well, no, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And really, the show was a comedy, really. It was a compilation of 4 suffrage plays that were written, directed, and performed by, suffragettes in the early 1900s. And a lot of the comedy, the vast majority of the comedy in these pieces came from them mocking women who were anti-suffragists. So the piece that I was mainly in, it was this kind of vehement canvasser. She was going among all these women's houses saying, isn't it awful that that these women are getting the vote and we need to do something, sign my petition. and and towards the end of it, her counterpart was, but aren't you wanting to exercise the same right that you're saying we should be denying women? And all this sort of kind of, no, that's not what I mean, because that's not it. Don't be silly. That's where a lot of the humour came from mocking women who wanted this. They wanted to be able to express their views. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought again.
But then, like, kind of picketing against women expressing their views.
Whilst expressing their views.
Yeah, whilst wanting to express it. Yeah, it's like a horrible vicious circle.
I think I discovered a new concept yesterday. Because we talked in the Scottish month, we talked about...
Still is Scottish month, by the way. Just to date this episode, 30th of January. It technically still is.
Yeah.
So I'll throw in some amendments at the end of this for like Scottish month.
Okay. So we talked about mansplaining, man-interrupting, and...
Sorry, Yann, I just man-interrupted you there.
Yes,
yeah, you did. But
No
man
joking.
on man action. Well, whatever. Mansplaining, man-interrupting, and what was the other one?
Man-spreading.
Man-spreading. So
What's
I discovered...
spreading?
So when we were at ACS, me and Anouk got on the subway back from Govan, and we were sitting beside each other, and I've got quite big thighs, so I'm like, right, I'll just like position my... Well, I do. The audience will see the subday, but I've got like rugby player legs, like they're quite wide. So I'm sitting as I usually sit, and the woman in front of us went to you and said something along the lines of like...
But she said it really passive aggressively over Adam to me. Like, isn't it really awful when men manspread? And I was just like, I didn't even realise that Adam was doing that. But like, because I'm quite small and the way that I sit as well is like, I'm quite contained.
Well, yeah, that's a very female thing, actually, to sit or to take up less space by crossing your legs or something. Mm-hmm. Ooh.
The thing is, if Anouk was uncomfortable, and I would clearly be able to see Anouk had no room, of course I would move. But it's just the kind of the fact of like, who am I upsetting right now? Am I upsetting her because my legs are open? This
is the problem, though. Like, we have been conditioned to be a certain way. So how do you then not blame men because they have they've also
conditioned themselves,
exactly, like
right.
They would interrupt a woman. They're more likely to interrupt a woman than another man, which is interesting. They've done statistics, like and this is the new one, which is like 75% of women are less likely to speak up if they're surrounded by men.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
So that's fear. It's so interesting because that's proper fear that we've been conditioned to feel, that if you're surrounded by men, you're not allowed to speak. And like even in 2018, did someone just knock? Oh no. Sorry. We still have this like conditioning in our heads to like, don't speak.
Yeah.
Don't use so much room, all this kind of stuff. And it's also like how, men want us to be dolls, like thin and, not busty and not talking a lot and all this kind of stuff.
That's just kind of archaic to me now. I'm like, really? Do men still think that?
Oh, for sure they do.
Oh, definitely.
Really?
Yeah,
definitely.
For sure they do. For sure they do.
You're letting us down, guys. Come on.
This is the problem, though.
It is bad.
It's just like a horrible few. But it seems like so many of the few are like powerful enough to like still sway everything. So
Trump. Have you seen again, it went viral. It was a video, it was a scientist, and I think she was German, and she'd come up with this theory, and she was on this talk show, I think, to explain this theory, because it was very, very important, seminal, they were saying. And it was, I think, just her and two men on stage. One of them might have been the interviewer, but she was explaining her theory, and both of them started cutting across her and explaining her own theory for her, as if this woman was incapable of doing it on her own. And then I think it was a good few women from the audience were like, can you let her speak, please? And there was this rapturous applause. And then she carried on with what she was saying. And, oh God. And yeah, of course it is the kind of, well, they've been conditioned to, but then it's kind of like, but there's audacity in that. There's the audacity of thinking that you can explain her theory better than she can herself.
Yeah. I think the best thing to think before you do something is, would you do that if they were a man?
Yeah.
And usually the answer is no, you wouldn't. You definitely wouldn't. So that's interesting.
For me, it's like situational in the sense of the cases of me interrupting Anouk, even on this podcast, as an example, is that I want to get involved in the conversation. And I think there's a fine line between wanting to get involved because you're adding something to getting involved to cut somebody off and explain it. Like there's a really weird scale of like, it's pride, I have to be like the man and explain it, to the I want to be involved part of it. Like that's a very difficult tightrope to walk, because you can do it a couple of times, but once it gets more into the explaining aspect of it, you're like, hang on, you're kind of taking over the conversation here. Yeah.
But at the same time, that's something that we realised last year when we all came together as a class. You got really annoyed that everybody kept cutting you off. And we realised that that's a Scottish thing.
Yeah.
Because Scots just jabber over each other and we don't know we're doing it. But obviously you being from a different part of the UK, we're like, it's so rude. And we were like, we didn't even realise that we were doing it.
It got really mad.
See, the first time Anouk went to dinner with me and my parents, that was amusing. Like, Anouk couldn't get a word in edgeways unless, like, my mum would ask her questions, but then, like, you'd be answering and my dad would be like, oh, right, yeah, get involved in that. And I'd be there going, yeah, and just, like, assessing the situation, like, oh, God, how's Anouk okay in this? Like,
looking
meeting
at
the
her
parents,
face.
like, are you all right? Sort of, can you understand my father?
I think my problem is as well is that if someone speaks, I won't speak. And then I'll wait for there to be silence. But in most situations, there is never silence.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just waiting for nothing. And then it's just like, I need to just...
Yeah.
Just like in podcast situations sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked in a previous episode about this being a Scottish thing, but I didn't realize that it also happened at ACS.
Yeah. No.
Okay. Yeah. So my new concept, it deals with chivalry. It's man helping.
Oh, chivalry's back.
It's man helping when those evil straight white males are helping women because they feel that they can't do that on their own.
I have a problem with this. So I used to live near Chelsea in London, and chivalry is still massively there. Like, girls don't pay, they open doors. Like, there's a lot of kind of archaic thinking, which is all fine because, you know, it's not about hating women. It's like, but you have to understand where this comes from. This comes from a time when women couldn't. They would faint and they would wear corsets and kind of restrict themselves to the home and all this stuff. So I think that's something that you have to think about. Like, it's something that's a good thing, but you also, if you think, I know that this is like really self-conscious, but if you're thinking a woman, I need to help her open the door, what else is she not allowed to do? Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're not allowing her to have the independence, what else are you thinking that she can't have independence for? Like, so if you're paying for her meal, are you basically saying that you are a better person? You kind of have to balance the two out.
And then you get the whole other parallel. It's like, I'm buying you meal, am I buying you, sort of thing. Like, am I paying for your evening? Is that another aspect? I think I could see some males thinking that, like, in a horrible way, that it is like, what do you mean I paid for your meal? It's like, it's not how that works. You can't say, oh, I was being chivalrous and then use that against the woman later on. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Like in Suffragette, when Taylor's like, look at all the things that I've done for you. And she's like, but I've had to pay for it. It's like kind of the same thing. It's like, and the amount of times I've been on a date with a man, and because he's paid, but insisted on paying as well, and then been a kind of offended when you're like, no, can we halve it, or can blah, blah, blah. So you're like, fine, pay, whatever. And then afterwards you're like, sorry, I'm not going to go home with you. And then he gets mad.
Well, I think payment's a difficult thing because it then introduces the concept of imbalance. So whether that is that the woman expects to get away with not paying, as I know can be the case, or is it that, so is that saying that in a way she's more powerful, that she deserves all this sort of thing? Or conversely, is it, like you said, the man going, I'm paying for this, therefore you owe me this?
Which happens.
That's where I think the payment thing's a problem. I personally I'm not comfortable with being paid for. I would always have something, or with my boyfriend it would be, I'll get this so you get that. I don't like I just don't like the feeling of being paid for. I don't like a free night out. It just doesn't sit right.
No.
Not because I think at this point in our relationship it would introduce any sort of imbalance.
No.
I don't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I don't like what it would represent. I think it represents that somebody is either in a stronger position or a weaker position.
Yeah.
And that could vary on the couple. But I think it introduces something.
Okay, and what about friends? Because I was in a store the other day and I found this neat thing and I thought of you. So will you accept that, or will you just throw it to my face?
I will accept that.
Gladly. That's quite cute.
That was a gift in good faith.
I'm sure that.
It's a French brand with a weird English sounding name, but it's a French brand.
Ooh, very
French,
nice.
yeah.
It's magical, like me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, because I think when men are only doing it to help someone, if you go back and say and become defensive, then it's like, oh Jesus Christ, we've got a feminist over here, and then it's like,
not one of those pesky feminists.
Yeah, exactly. Who ruin the fun, and they ruin things that like traditions and are slightly archaic, but in a good way.
I would have got away with this night out if it wasn't you pesky feminists.
I mean, it's
Scooby-Doo reboot 2018.
I want to be Velma.
People that like I really
Gender fluid Scooby-Doo.
I really admire, even very adamantly say that the wage gap doesn't exist. And that's a problem, because it's like usually those people are men, and it's like, I'm sorry, but I don't think you have. I feel like quite a lot of the time we need to talk to women more as well. Like we can't keep on hearing it from men saying it doesn't exist, and it's like, okay, well, what's your basis for that, and why is so many people coming out and saying that it does? Like there must be something going on.
Well, the BBC has literally just published the fact that the fact that there's a 9.2 or 9.3% difference on average between men's and women's salaries.
And this is only a year after with the BBC released their top 10 as well, and you see like Graham Norton and all these big names earn what they're earning, and even to think between that.
Yeah, see, you said on average, that's the issue. Because if you put every woman in the workforce and every man in the total workforce, obviously there will be differences because it's different jobs. That's so you've got two things: either the fact that the wage gap doesn't exist at all, or it's not like 25%, or the fact that it exists obviously, but it's not based on gender. Because if you put 10 billionaires in the average and 10 males and 10 working class women, and obviously they will earn more on the male side, but that's because they're billionaires.
I think
so when you do the average, you've got everyone. Yeah, it does, but you probably have more billionaires on one side.
But then that means that women aren't. There are more men in higher paying jobs, And that's not because men are more, what's the word?
Competent.
They're competent, exactly.
The whole thing with the boys' club still kind of exists. And I feel it's moving, but especially with Yann's statistic, that's very true. And the question is now, how do you get women into that position of being like billionaires? I think that is going to come within the next 10, 15 years because the whole attitude and the conversation is changing. But for now, it is still, you've got the older generation of richer men that really skew the average as well, which I think is difficult.
Boys Club for sure. I mean, and up until 10 years ago, I think, you couldn't have a female jet pilot in the French Navy or in the army.
That's crazy.
Female reboot of Top Gun.
Yeah.
Submarines still, but it was for, it's convenience purposes, because as they would be treated as females, so like separate restrooms and stuff. So it requires additional modifications on the submarines. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm not putting it. Because
I'm sure the army could never afford that.
Except if you are
the
officers.
French don't win any battles, so
Jesus Christ.
History banter.
Except if you are officers, because they have the special quarter. We have they have the special quarters, so that could work. But
yeah, it is a huge issue of like, and I think it's also a case of where do we start is one of the big things too. Like it's like a massive thing. It's like where do you pinpoint the start to see change?
I personally think that our generation's kids, there will be a change for sure. Because the way that I bring up my kids is definitely not going to be, you have a pram and you have a truck. Because that just gives you all these gender roles immediately in your head. And there's no way, like, for example, on business meetings, what do guys do? They go to a strip club. Like, what does that say? Like, that says something about our society. I'm not saying it's wrong. Go to a strip club. Like, I've been to a strip club once and it was interesting. But
that's something I want to discuss.
That was, interesting. Kind of horrible, actually. But like, sometimes it happens and fine. But you've also got to realize that not everyone is as educated and as progressive as you. So if they see a woman on a pole dancing for them, what are they going to think about the secretary?
Did you go for a date or did you go on a work thing? To the strip club?
I went on a work. No, it wasn't a work thing. It was like a friend's thing. We decided to go because I was really drunk, and I probably shouldn't be saying this on a podcast, but and it was in Shoreditch, and it was really awful because it was one of those really sleazy ones where the woman definitely wasn't paid enough, and it was just like.
So I was going to ask, is the woman there on her own terms? Because that's important.
Yeah. I mean, how do you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's what scares me. It's like, how do you? And this is the thing. Like, there's so much like underworld stuff. Like, you never know who's actually in control of the situation. Like, if she doesn't want to do something, is her boss like bribing her? Or
does she pay the penalty for not doing something? That whole that aspect too.
Does it come out of her tips? Like, if she pisses off the wrong person? But I mean, it's all a bit horrible.
In terms of boys' club again, and it will go into bilingual corner. Bilingual corner. Ooh.
It literally is a corner now because you're in this side of the frame.
Talked about how the words they're like feminized and masculinized kind of thing. It's called like inclusive writing. So there are 3 key points to this. So so far, it won't change, but that's the advocacy of the thing. So far in the French language, when there is a room full of, let's say, 10 women and 1 guy, in writing and in even when you speak, you refer to the group as kind of a male-y kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like when you write, it's like. I can't really explain in English, but it's kind of the male takes precedence or dominance over in terms of language. So you have this. You also have what I talked in a previous episode, which is the exact opposite that you have in the Anglophone places. The fact actor, actress. So we had all the jobs are feminized as much as possible. So And the last thing with both endings in the same word. So that would have an example is like thus actor dot res.
That's what you meant by having the yeah. I because when you brought that up, was it in Brave we talked about that?
I think probably.
Probably. I was like, so they're gonna have like end of the word bracket what the word would be in French, but it's literally the end of the word.
Yeah.
Right.
The end. They're not even a point. Like yeah. And also something that I also remembered, which is really weird. I'm not sure why, but when you write letters, well, for our listeners, before emails, there were actually paper letters. And when you send a letter to either to a married woman or to the couple, it will be Madame et Monsieur, and then the name and last name of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone wants to send a letter to my mother, it would be Madame et Monsieur Denis Sicamois.
Right.
Didn't hear Claire anywhere in that sentence. So that's always been a bit.
We have that here too. Like if you have, I mean, there are different points in life where you use that. Like even speaking, like in language, not even writing. It's like you would say
Even at weddings sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, even like a wedding. Do not get me started on weddings.
Yeah, because that's where I would hear it. Like, oh, now you're Mrs.
Mr. and Mrs. Dick.
Yeah.
I've even heard like, the
like-
equivalent of Mr. and Mrs. Adam Dick.
Yeah, that's what I'm absolutely.
Mrs. Adam Dick,
You're now
yeah.
Mrs. Adam Dick now, are you?
That's
Like,
really
that
interesting.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah, Mrs. Adam Dick. God.
Yeah.
You're absolutely not going to take that name, are you?
Fuck off.
Yeah. Oh, dear. I'm the last of my line as well. Like I'm the ironically name for a movie coming out here, The Last of the Dicks. I'm the last male of my lineage.
I don't think that's a film that you're going to be discussing on the podcast.
The Last of the Dicks. Is it good, bad, or just plain standards? I don't know. Maybe I'll make a film called The Last of the Dicks. That'll be interesting.
I don't think you should.
Well, if it's done tastefully, I can make it an arty film. You know, it doesn't have to just be like, oh, everyone knows what this is going to be. In fact, that's probably one of the reasons I'm like, I kept my stage name is my real name, because I'm like, you know what, being the last of my family, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to shy away from what my name is. Just going to keep it as it is.
Well, if someone's called if someone is called Chiwetel Ejiofor, I think anyone can keep their own names.
That's very true. He's done very well.
It's very true.
Great name.
Great guy. Yeah, it was the first time I saw him. It's digressing, but in Serenity, the movie they did after Firefly.
Oh, the follow-up thing, yeah.
Awesome character. Awesome work. Yeah. We can go wherever you want.
I think it's interesting, especially with a film like Suffragette, because plot-wise it is that one of the things I thought was not weird or like lacking in the film sense is that it's more on fictional people, which gives you the ability to go where you want with the story, but it in a way it loses a little bit of it. I just wonder what people thought. Would you be more invested if it was like stories of, say if it was like Emily Davidson's story the whole way through, like we followed that character to the end, would that be more enticing to you as a viewer?
I don't think so. I didn't see it as a problem that Carey Mulligan's character was fictitious.
Because it showed that the whole group was so much bigger than just the names that you've heard of. It's just like you've got like absolute nobody's. Now that we're filming, I can do that. Yeah, like you have just normal women who probably wouldn't have had a name in.
At the same time as well, it lets you see somebody becoming involved with the movement. You don't really, I don't know if it was about, Emmeline Pankhurst or Emily Davidson. I don't know if it would have started from them at the beginning. It probably would focus much more on when they became like much more involved with the cause, You can see the gradual coming around.
When I was watching it, I was trying to remember why we watched the ACS. I think it was one of the first lessons we had on story structure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it works very well. I agree that I think I think maybe it would have more impact for some people if it was a historical figure, because you could look back and go, oh, this is this event, this is that event, because some films with history do that. But what works in this one's favour is that the fictitious character we have, you see a journey, you go somewhere with them, which works, because the whole idea of putting yourself into the situation works, because you see how it plays off.
It's nice as well, because like through everything she became a suffragette. It's almost like people not wanting her to become one made her more likely to become one. That force feeding, oh my God. I felt so horrible after that. It was like, it was done so well.
I know, well, that's one of the things. I think I was really pleased that they didn't shy away from the brutality. Yeah. Because I'd actually forgotten, I rewatched it, and I'd actually forgotten about the force feeding scene. And I saw the scene where, you know, the women were, when they found out that the bill wasn't going to get reconsidered, they were beaten and, you know, thrown about and bundled into the back of the vans. And I thought, yeah, I'm really pleased they didn't shy away from that. I wonder if they'll do the force feeding though. And they did. And I was like, yes,
they did. And it was gruesome. Like it was just
fucking awful.
It was horrible. And I mean, but it was, I mean, that happened. So it was nice that they showed that, because that's not fictitious. That actually happened. Like women were, and this is why it's really funny when people nowadays say like, oh, what are they moaning about? Like, you know, women have always had this. It's like women used to be like absolutely nothing. Like we were pretty much slaves and not that long ago. So it's so funny when people are like, you know, oh, what are they complaining about? Or for God's sake, like.
Well, she says in the film, she was like, we work a third more of the hours.
Yeah, we work more.
And I don't know if it was quite half the pay, but certainly nowhere near what the men were getting, but they were doing a third more hours.
Yeah.
You know, essentially slaves.
Less, yeah.
Wasn't it something like they got 13 and the men got 19 shillings a week?
Something like that. Yeah. Something like that.
So it's like significantly less, and then working more.
And you can bet the children were getting buttons.
Oh, children wouldn't have got anything, probably. I would imagine. Like,
and I mean, one of the children were getting assaulted by the guy, and I'm sure that happened a lot.
Well, the case in the Victorian era was that you needed the kids to like go onto the machines and change stuff. So a lot of them would be orphans as well. Like, you would get them from an orphanage, and you would like, I don't have to.
Oh God, yeah, like chimney sweeps.
Yeah, chimney sweeps and all that sort of job. Yeah,
awful. I remember learning that about that at school.
Getting a chimney sweep.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah, I mean, I this is one of the things I go back to when I think about when I created the rating, that this film could never be just plain standard because it doesn't shy away from the brutality. I'm like, it sticks to an idea and it goes with it. If this film had decided like, we're going to tell a suffragette story and we're just going to be like, it's votes for women, there's a bit of arguing, and I'm like, why are we not getting it? And it's like very like mundane, staying away, being safe. I'm like, that's boring to watch. You're like, I know this, I've read a history book. You want something a bit more engaging. You want something like provokes, because even everyone that watches, like when you see the brutality of like the club hitting the woman and you hear the foley of the whack, you're like, Jesus,
she's full on lying on the ground and gets clubbed over the face.
Yeah, like it's like a proper beating. Like it wasn't like, oh, they're women, like let's just slap them around a little bit. It's like they actually punch them in the stomach at one point. Like it's crazy. But like it was nice because if if it was through the lens of Emmeline Pankhurst or someone like that, who I think did come from a very educated family and like they had money and all this kind of stuff, and so she had power in the first place. It's nice to know that this one was kind of supporting someone that had no money and had nothing, and that's usually the women that got it the worst, obviously, because they're like fodder in the cause.
I think that speaks a measure to how noble the cause is, that being able to join people from, especially in that time, it's working. The class system was way more of a divide than anything else. If that's true, if she's from higher up, being able to unify everyone from no matter where you were for one cause is quite an achievement. Especially
because, as far as I know, it was more women of the upper class that were involved in the anti-suffrage movement, because I'm sure. So don't quote me on this, I could be totally wrong, but I think, remembering from Change research, these women, they'd been indoctrinated as well, by their male counterparts, but they had much more to lose. They were in a very male world, and they didn't have to worry about as much. They were going to be kept safe. They were going to be clothed. They were going to be fed. They were going to enjoy a nice life. And they didn't want anything to upset this. And again, I could be totally wrong about that. Feel free to prove me wrong.
But that does.
And I'm not speaking for everyone, but
that does make sense, because it's like, what would happen to my kids? And also because they have no property themselves. If the man decides to then put them in a mental asylum, like I'm sure loads of women were just, you know, suddenly put into asylums because all the man had to say was like, you know, she's crazy, she's acting up, she's not doing her wifely duties. And then or begging, or, you know, put on the streets, and like from having money to then just like being kicked out. Like, yeah, I'm sure that would be quite scary.
I think though that was why I really appreciated Romola Garai's character in it as well. It was a view from another social class that was, you know, it was the unifying view. But I think, so I was telling you that I kind of put it on in the background and I was doing other things and gradually all the other things that I was doing just kind of fell kind of by the wayside. And you know why it was? It was the sequences of shots that they use. So I had never quite noticed before that the framing is super, super tight in a lot of the shots, super tight. And not only is it super tight, but it goes on for a very long time, just switching between really tight shots, really tight close-ups. And you begin to miss the distance and the breathing room that you get in that mid-shot. I feel like that's something which is quite purposefully done. They don't give you the breathing space of that mid-shot as much as they do within film in general. And so you feel that confinement and the closeness and the helplessness in moments.
Like her in the prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's probably why the force feeding scene was really hard to watch, because you're literally there, like in the room, and it's not just like overlooking or like a wide shot. It's like you're right there. And like the woman, I thought it was a really nice look into like the woman that's holding her down.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a moment where she's like, I fucking hate the fact that I have to do this, because she probably thinks her being in prison is wrong, I'm guessing, because she probably is part of the cause too, in her own way, even if it's just in her head.
It's also a subtle turning point of like more women paying attention to the cause, I think, as well, because it comes in the later half of the film where we get to the Martinism of Emily Davidson. But even at that point, they're beginning to see like a change in the women going, and even the males, because that scene's followed up by Brendan Gleeson's character going, this is a bit much, isn't it? Like, if you kill somebody, this is over. Like, it's going to change.
They'll have their martyr, and that's kind of all they'll need to then be like, do you know what, fuck you guys.
Because even then, I remember going from history when force feeding started happening and it was reported in the newspaper, even people were like, this is a bit, this must be a huge issue if they're doing it. Because it changed from like, you could easily spin it to vandalism, like firebombing letterboxes or putting acid on golf courses, sort of things that we see in the beginning of the film with the rock throwing at the shop window with all the dolls. Like, it moves from just vandalism to like people standing up for what they believe in, suffering themselves, and people going, this is a bit, God, they must really, really believe in it.
And then killing themselves for it. Like, that's like a big deal. I also quite liked how they had the statistics afterwards, because it was like how long it actually took for something to actually happen. Like, I mean, obviously it was like women with property and women with money first, but like it took years for women to actually get the vote. So they must have been, even after Emily Davidson's death, it took years.
Well, it took what happened was Emily Davidson's death in the film is 1912. The film takes place in 1912. The women's movement was really picking up motive, and people were caring, and then bam, First World War happens. Like,
oh God, yeah.
Because there was an agreement between the suffragette movement and Parliament going, look, we can deal with these issues after this. We need to deal with this first. And they went fine, and the women, obviously, you know from history, they go off and work in the places and prove themselves as men. And then there's the whole issue when men come back and they're like
there's no
more
jobs
skilled.
for
There's
them.
no, yeah, and that changes it. So yeah, Emily Davison's death is a major playing force. And if World War I hadn't happened, absolutely, the movement probably would have been some women would have got the vote like 1914, 1913, that era, as opposed to then all women getting the vote. In about 1928, which I think is the final time when
France was 44. France 44. Saudi Arabia 3 years ago.
I was going to say at the end of the film, but just before the credits roll, it tells you when all these nations got, these women got their right to vote, and at the time it hadn't hit 2015 yet. So it said Saudi Arabia expected to get the vote in 2015 or something like that.
2015. Oh, it's horrific.
That is terrible.
It's absolutely horrific.
Getting back to force feeding, and there was no point also. We force feed our ducks because we eat their livers, but women? Not really.
We don't eat women's livers,
No, just foie gras. That's duck liver, yeah.
Oh, God, awful.
It's the weird thing of like, we don't want you to die in jail, heaven forbid. But we'll suffer.
You can suffer.
Yeah,
though.
we'll subject you to horrible torture so that you can live, so that we don't look bad.
They want them to break, I'm sure, and then tell them like all the ins and outs of the suffragette movement. Like, but at that point, it's just like, nah.
I mean, women would chain themselves to fences as well. That's other accounts of, they would just chain themselves to a fence, like, I'm not eating for days, and just be out in public, as opposed to being in jail where we see here. Like, it was all over the place. There wasn't just one case of, like, in jail, somebody would go on for a hunger strike. Be in public as well. It would just happen.
Well, one of my favourite quotes from the film is when Anne-Marie Duff's character goes, if you want me to act respectable, then make the law respectable. And I was like, oh.
And I think
that's a good one.
Carey Mulligan also says, like, he says something like, I uphold the law, and it's like, the law doesn't mean anything to me because I didn't have a say in it.
I didn't have a say in making it.
I just wanted to like go outside and scream.
That scene between them at that point is intense.
Oh, it's so good. I was actually thinking about this, like, how did it feel to watch it as a man?
Which section?
Because like I felt really passionate, and like maybe more so because everything's happening right now about like, victim shaming and women's rights in general now, and like, so I felt like really revved up. But like, how did it feel to not have that kind of
the whole film?
Yeah.
Well, I've always had an interest in like history. I think if I wasn't an actor, I'd end up being a historian. Even though in our questionnaire I said I quite like to go at a chef, which I would too. But historian was if I'd actually went to had a real education instead of going to drama school.
Education.
I would have. I think I would have studied history. So I always enjoy stuff like this. But yeah, the way the film presents it to me, it does get you involved, because the journey they go on is, she is skeptic in the beginning, like she isn't full in, and I think that's the major in for a male perspective, because it's not forced upon you. And I think a lot of men now have that big issue of like, you have to be a feminist, as opposed to discovering feminist issues for themselves, like it being an open discussion, which I think it should be, because everyone should get the same education, right? Everyone believes that, around the world, like that's a huge issue, a huge global issue about. There are some parts of the world where education is severely lacking, and especially like if it's lacking for the males, it's even going to be worse so for females. Like,
well, women don't get educated.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about like in African countries, you see these appeal for like for putting a kid through school. I'm like, does that apply to women as well? And it becomes a whole bigger issue.
That's very interesting.
But for me, I'm like, I enjoyed that it didn't force the message upon me. Because it shouldn't have to be. You should see naturally that it is an issue, and if you don't see it as an issue, I'm like,
we've got a problem.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, if you could watch this and go, what are they mourning about? I'm like, are you joking? Did you watch the same film as me? Because you clearly see the complete difference. The thing it works in the film, and for me, the moment when it goes like, right, okay, I'm in. I'm always on their side anyway, because I'm like, it's equality. But the moment when they give the testimony to the members of Parliament, which this is the first film to ever be filmed in the actual Parliament ever.
I don't. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it actually?
It is actually. This is the first film to be allowed in
Wow.
actual Parliament because MPs had to vote to allow it to happen.
That is sick.
So when they're walking into the House of Parliament, the open hall is the actual Houses of Parliament.
That's nice. It's about a film. It's a film about women's rights.
Yeah.
Is it
That's like the
actually?
first-
Yeah, this is
the first time.
Yeah.
That is
That's
sick.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's sick.
So when and obviously they think, right, they've heard us, they're going to give us the vote, and it doesn't go their way. I'm like, yeah, this is a bit shitty. And I'm like, I can't side with somebody that heard that and went, no, we still think there's no problem here. I'm like, come on, there clearly is.
It is
Oh, and then
proper
they start
crushing.
beating them
Yeah.
outside the Parliament gates,
It is crushing.
and it's just like, my God, this is terrifying.
I think any male that watches it will instantly be on board because it is. I think the major problem, even anyone in the world, actually, no matter what gender you are, hates preaching. I hate it in theatre. I hate if a show is like deliberately trying to tell me the message and anything else is completely wrong. I would rather it be subtle. Like in writing, I usually go, I'm going to write from the other perspective of what I believe in, and then see if I can get it. See if I can see the other side to make it more interesting. For me personally.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I feel like it was no, I lost it. I have no idea what I was about to say.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I liked it's the lack of preaching and the non-exposition. It was all showing you stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though I said in one episode, but we agreed that we're not going to talk politics that much, so I'm not going to explain why, but I still think that vote is a scam, whatever the gender.
Yeah.
So,
we did discuss that, yeah.
That's a different issue.
Yeah, we're talking about the right to vote.
Everyone should have the right to vote, whether you choose to exercise that right. Again, is your own opinion, but I feel like this gives another context because there is talk of people going, what's the point in voting? I'm like, well, look what people did to get you this. Like, take that in mind when deciding to go, I'm not going to use it.
Well, I was watching this thing the other day called Middle Ground. Have you heard of it on
No.
YouTube?
No.
So it's called The Middle Ground. It's a series of, I don't know, like 10-minute long videos where they bring 3 people from opposing views together in a room and they discuss whatever it is. So there's an abortion one with pro-choice and then pro-life.
Wow.
There is believers versus atheists. And for the main, it's very, very respectful and it's not shouting over each other and they do really listen to the other's point of view. But there was one and it was liberals and conservatives.
Oh, that's never going to be good.
And it actually, it wasn't as bad as you think it's going to be. But they give statements and the people have to say whether they agree or don't agree with the statements. And one of the statements was, if you don't vote in an election, do you have the right to bitch about the results? And I think that kind of feeds into what we were talking about.
Yeah. Do you have the... It is... I think...
It's interesting.
Well, it's a conversational point. Like, you always care what's going on in your country. Like, it's everywhere. No matter where you look, you always hear what's going wrong in your country. And it's very an integrated part of, like, oh, God, look what's happening in this government. Like, no government's ever done well in retrospect. Like, you would always remember the bad things, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually, do you have a right to say? It's difficult. I mean, it's a walk between free speech and then the whole effort of gaining the vote. Because I mean, people fought and died. I mean, another interesting thing being Scottish Month is there was a campaign for Scottish independence around the end of the First World War because it was Britain's decision to take the whole of the UK as a country into this war. And there was a large collective in Scotland going, we're fighting this war for not our own sake. But then the argument fell apart when it's like, if we break away from this country, the Scottish people that have died for this fight have literally died for nothing because the cause they were in doesn't exist anymore, which derailed that whole argument. So when you take it all together, it's like no matter what you think is right, it never there's never a conclusive answer, I think, ever.
Well, sort of, because if you have the right to vote, I don't see why you shouldn't vote.
Yeah.
Like, it's not very hard. Obviously, if you can't vote, that's a very different thing.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. It depends whether you're talking about everybody in general or those who have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you don't have an address, you can't vote.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're under 16 in Scotland, you can't vote.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you don't have a right to complain about the way
That's
things
true.
are.
Yeah. And like,
So-
for example, I couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, but I can definitely bitch about Donald Trump.
Yeah, precisely.
That's true, yeah.
But I to be fair, I haven't been voting recently because I have a German passport and I don't actually have to justify myself now. But now that I'm here,
It's a whole complicated issue.
it's
we're
a
trying to
complicated issue. But
solve,
basically, because I'm German, and in Scotland I don't have English. I'm not Scottish, and I'm not English. I'm not an English citizen. Means that I can't say that on my ballot thing, and
Right.
that means and I actually got a letter saying you are not eligible to vote here, which is interesting. But because I'm not a citizen, yeah.
You were probably eligible to vote for the referendum, as I was.
because it's an EU issue, right? That was to deal with migrants as well. Like if you were an EU citizen, you were allowed to vote in that in Britain. If you're resident in Britain, at that time.
For EU, yeah.
There's a-
I just meant for like other.
There's a rule in British politics that you like if you have to be the citizen, because the argument would be is that you would just appeal to the students, like in like for example in the university, if you had people that come from Asia or people that come from America, wherever they come from to study at that university, you would just go, look, here's this, and they go, right, we'll vote for you, when they actually haven't lived here and it doesn't mainly affect them. So
But that said, there was students, when I was at university, there was students from England who were able to vote in the Scottish referendum, despite the fact that they were there studying. So I wonder how that works.
yeah, that's true. Maybe it's if that's because that would have been a Scottish Parliament one.
but
So
they were
maybe
able
that's,
to
maybe
vote,
that's
so-
when it's the difference.
Would that be a
'cause-
British thing then?
Well, maybe
like
the
British
actual,
people can vote.
Well, the House of Parliament would be it's different law. There's Scots law and there's English law. It's two different degrees. For example, if I studied Scots law at university, I couldn't be a lawyer in England because it's a different legal system. I would have to study that.
Right.
So there's probably a legislation in for the a UK wide thing, because it's a Parliament vote as opposed to the Scottish. But then again, I'm like, oh no, Scottish referendum was that it was a vote in Scotland that would be handed to the British government going, look, here's what they say, can we get this done, sort of thing.
Right.
Which is the same with the EU, the vote we had right now, which is that we're wanting to leave, we're now going to negotiate terms so that we can leave, sort of thing. Which I believe which is what's going on. If I'm wrong, somebody will correct me on that. I'm well sure of that.
Yeah.
I think
Like
that's what's going
Scotland has a later date that you can have an abortion, or less time. I can't remember if it's less or more, but there's a difference.
There's a difference between the treatment and because NHS England and Wales has their own system and NHS Scotland has their own, because health is a devolved power to the Scottish Parliament.
Oh,
which we have.
and so, for example, in Scotland, I have no records because apparently in England they can't send my records over to Scotland. Like they can't. So if I go to the doctor here, they say you're not in our system because I'm not with NHS Scotland and I haven't been. Which is, I agree, it's weird because it's
That is
like
weird.
it's the NHS. Like I don't understand it. Like I've been in this country for 25 years, but apparently.
It's like if you
In Scotland, I don't exist.
It's like if you simplify it down, it's like if I go into one Boots, surely I can go into any Boots and use my reward card. But I'm like, Adam, that doesn't work and you're being trivial.
Yeah, but when you go
Got to get them points.
Nectar points.
when you go to the A&E, like the 2 times I went 2 years ago for the my issues I had following the play and before with the stairs, I just appeared at the A&E and that just checked me out, and they didn't ask for any papers or money or anything.
I think it's a case of you went to A&E, you weren't registering for a GP, which it's like your name's on file and all that stuff. But A&E, yeah, they can't turn you away if you've got an injury. They will treat you no matter where you're
Well,
from.
yeah, that would be barbaric.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then it's like America.
Well, I remember, I don't know where I heard this story. It might have been when we were in New York.
Uber driver, so not Uber, taxi driver.
Was it the Lyft guy in America told us this story?
Yeah.
The fact that, it was going back to the airport.
Yeah.
This woman was coming over to like have her kid and they like turned her away. Like it happened during like the coming over period. Because I can't remember the context of the story. Was it the fact
if you're born in America, you're immediately a citizen.
So there will be cases of people that will travel to America right on the verge of their due date, so that their child will get citizenship.
I see.
So there's a big problem in America with that. The fact that like some people will get to become, because if the kid's a citizen, it gets the rights, and then you can bring the parents over. Like it's a whole thing that I don't know enough about to comment on, which I'm not coming on. It's just like the guy was telling me a story. I'm like, I don't reckon. Would you think that would happen in Britain as well? The same sort of idea?
What, if you're born in England, you are immediately a citizen?
It depends what the law says.
I don't know what the law says, but in NHS, I'm sure if you came on holiday and you were pregnant and they're like, I need to have this, the NHS would be like, oh, yeah, we will deliver the child.
Oh yeah, I don't think they would turn you away.
No.
I know one that is not true, and that's too bad. If the delivery is inside the plane, there were rumors that you would get like free tickets for life for that kid.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing! But I doubt anyone would like.
I might just make sure that happens.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm only 6 months pregnant.
Knowing your luck,
it's my due date.
Like, congratulations, you got free tickets to fly on Ryanair. So you've got a limited destination links. It's like British Airways.
No. I would make sure that I'd like splurged out on a first class British Airways.
I'd like to book a ticket on British Airways to New Zealand. That's 20 odd hours, right? So yeah, that's enough time. We could wing it.
Due dates tomorrow. It's fine.
Like Etihad, they have the first class is like flats. Etihad.
Oh, it's mental.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that's Arab money. That's insane money.
Oil.
Yeah, oil.
We
We didn't really talk much about Suffragette, but there you go.
It was a suffrage conversation. It's the thing I love about this podcast is that it doesn't necessarily have to be about the movie, but if the movie gets you talking about other things, which it has in this case, then it's done its job, you know?
Yeah.
Shall we go into rating territory?
Do you want me to do my amendments to Scottish Month after that then? I'll do it afterwards, because then it can be a separate thing if we need it to be.
Yeah.
So here at the Good, the Bad, and the Just Plain Standard, we rate films on a good, bad, and just plain standard rating. Being just plain standard being less than entertaining and just mind-numbingly dull. So with that in mind, Anouk, Yann, and Molly, was Suffragette good, bad, or just plain standard? Start with our guest, Molly.
Is there any doubt? Really, quite evidently good.
Good. Anouk.
I agree. It was very good.
Yann?
Good?
Yeah, for me it's good.
It wasn't legendary.
No. And it was the one...
I kind of want to say it's more than good, though.
Well, it's like there's on a scale, like we have a... I really hope one day that I do work with the director of John Wick or the fight coordinator just to go, look, I don't know if you've heard my podcast, but every time we talk about a film being like okay-ish good, we say John Wick. Look, it's nothing. It's just to do with me personally. So like the lower end of that is like John Wick is like a lower end. So like it could be good's one of these weird ones, but it's a big long scale. I think this is a good, and it's also a focal point film because it gets the conversation started, which is a better comment than some films in our good category can say. Like, yeah, it was good. I mean, we bloody rated Jigsaw good, and I don't remember anything about it at all.
The thing is
Oh
that
dear. Why did we do that?
Because I got all nostalgic for Saw. I'm like, I finally got to see a Saw movie. Also because the guy walking out, this is a true story, Willie, this is amazing. Me and Anouk saw it on like Halloween, so there was like some diehard fans there, and they were walking out, the credits was going, and the guy just shouts, this is typical Glasgow, he just shouts, the book was better.
yeah, the thing about
Glasgow.
The thing about this Suffragette one is you have to actually get to it. Well, we saw it because it was an assignment for ACS, but I never heard about it before.
It was in the cinema.
Yeah, I guess.
And funnily enough, Meryl Streep was front and centre, even though she must have been in it for all of 4 minutes.
Like 5
Yeah,
minutes.
true.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that was the other thing. The only sort of like negative thing I was thinking while watching this. Like, this feels like a TV movie in a way. Or it
Aye.
would, yeah, but then again, when you brought up the fact about the tight shot, which I didn't even notice, and then I went back and thought, I was like, no, that's quite a good style of actually shooting, and it makes it a bit more. So I'm in between about being TV to movie quality, but it was like very much like a British. It felt very British to me.
I think it's because when the BBC does kind of television movies, period television movies, they kind of favour that drab colour palette. That's maybe I kind of get where you're going with that.
That's very true, actually.
You can do your updates.
Cool. I'll go and get the thing I wanted to get then. 2 seconds. So, my mum and dad occasionally phone me and like when they've just listened to an episode and give me updates of things I got wrong. So here's the amendments to Scottish Month. So in Braveheart, I correct Anouk by saying it's not Patrick McGugan, it's Patrick McGowan who was Doctor Who. This is wrong. It is actually Patrick McGugan. And yeah, he's a completely different actor. I got that completely wrong. What else do I say? Is it in that episode? It is. Yann is assaulting me there. I believe in that episode, one of the episodes I talk about kilts. You can get a Dixon tartan, right? Which translates to son of Dick. So technically there is a tartan for that. Also, my dad wanted me to say that the Scottish rugby team has a kilt. Or a tartan, so I don't know if that's irrelevant to anyone, but
So odd. Why?
well, I said in the episode that football teams all have them.
Scottish Ballet's got one.
Did they really?
Yeah. Scottish Ballet have a tartan.
Is it nice?
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
Something while listening to the episode back that I didn't remember, at one point you asked if we could get like titles. Like actually you can, if you buy, there are actually websites, you buy like 10 square meters and you get some Scottish land and you can be a laird. Or lady.
What?
A laird.
A laird.
A laird.
You just said exactly the same thing. That doesn't mean anything. Like a
equivalent-
lord.
A lord, a laird.
Oh, that's
Kind
cool.
of.
The equivalent, yeah. The Lord of Glencoe. Oh.
That's cool.
What was the other big one? I did an Instagram live while I was editing Brave, right? And I had a revelation with Brave. I'm changing my rating for Brave. I'm like, I talk about it in the live that's gone now. I didn't save it, but the whole thing for me was that I enjoyed Brave after the 45-minute mark when the bear aspect was brought into it with the mum and daughter. It becomes about that. If honestly, if I was not watching it for the podcast, I wouldn't have got to that point. So in that mind, I have to say that in my mind, Brave is bad, which makes Brave the first thing on the bad list.
Oh.
Ooh.
But it is a terminus for me because the latter half is good and it's great, but the first half is like, Yann's assaulting me left, right, and centre today, like knocking the shit out of me.
No, because the blade artist is hiding Anouk's Toblerones.
Oh, that's true. But I think the viewers have worked out who Anouk is now by 25 episodes, and it's like we need the Toblerones.
That's fancy cover. Like this.
Yeah, this is the last thing I was going to bring up.
You like Toblerone, right?
I do indeed.
You should take away her Toblerone.
Sorry.
I'm currently reading this, which is Blade Artist, which is I've just punched the shit out of the mic again. I did that. I've done that before in this episode.
Lots of editing to do.
I'm currently reading that because after we did the whole train spotting thing, I got a bit of an Irvin Welsh kick, and the guy that I'm doing it, I'm rehearsing a play right now. His work reminds me of Irvin Welsh as well, and it sometimes gets compared to each other because of the writing, because it's very Scottish and it feels very Scottish. I just wanted to bring up Blade Artist for anyone that listened to T2 or have seen T2 and haven't read an Irvin Welsh book. I recommend Blade Artist because it feels very much like a book influenced by T2. Like that film is all about reflection of age, and Blade Artist is very much taking an older character that we know and putting it in a totally different light. So
I think it's easier to read as well than the other two, because the other two are like very, if not fully in Scots, but it's like quite kind of working class Glaswegian, Edinburgh.
Yeah. Well, because Begbie's chapters in Trainspotting and Porno and even in Skag Boys, the prequel of the books is like really difficult to read. But it's not even a plot spoiler. At the beginning of the book, Begbie has moved to California, so he's got like a sort of hidden Scottish American accent. So his dialogue is not too like Scottish. But when he comes back to Edinburgh, because one of his sons has been murdered, that he meets more characters, so there's a bit more Scottish. But a lot of it is like descriptive as well. So it is probably one of the easier urban Welsh novels to read that I've read. So I recommend that as well. So that's my amendments to Scottish Month.
Cool.
And my mum will probably tell me I missed something as well, so, I'll update that.
Quine, Loon, whatever.
Oh, that was the other thing. My mum got all of the Doric questions right, except for one. She got all of them right without having Emma to tell us what the one thing was. She worked them all out.
That's pretty good.
Which is quite impressive, actually.
Fichikama?
Fichikama.
I'll ask her what one she didn't get.
Fichikama.
Okay, I think we could go into the questionnaire.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here at The Good, the Bad, and the Just Plain Standard, we introduced the Milk in a Wineglass questionnaire. So it's based on Marcel Proust, Bernard Pivot, and James Lipton. So when we don't have a guest, we actually answer 4 of those questions, but when we have a guest, it's the guest's turn for the full shebang. So, Molly.
Yes.
What is your favorite word?
Dreich.
Oh, yeah, it's a good word.
Dreich's a good word.
Which means?
Dark and...
You would use it to describe the weather, really. So if the weather's dreich, it's like dull, maybe a bit rainy.
misty. Or
Yeah,
foggy.
just kind of shit.
Grey, I always think.
Maybe a better word than
Just
shit.
Yeah, because every time my dad comes from like the east coast of Fife, so like whenever like it's called the har, which is another one of my favourite words. The har from the harbour is when the... I've probably got that wrong, and my dad's going to go, what are you getting the har wrong for? It's when like all the fog and mist comes off the sea, and it's just like... It's described as pea soup, which again is another Scottish description that makes no sense. Just really, all it means is thick, because like pea soup is apparently thick.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I saw it's pea soup out there the day. I'm like, what, Dad? What do you mean? It's like pea soup, but you can't see bugger all. I'm like, right, okay.
Cullen skink is thick. Also.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, the weather's awfully Cullen skink today. Pea soup just has a like little bit of like credibility to it.
What is your least favorite word?
Ho. Because not only is it misogynistic, it's just quite shit. Like...
Ho. Oh,
Ho.
it's in like, you're a ho.
You're a hoe, yeah.
Like,
Like, it's so unimaginative. It's just like kind of, well, no, she's a hoe, though. Like...
It's also so like they can't even be bothered to call you a whore.
Exactly.
Like you're not even worth. You're not even.
Not exactly.
You're not even that bad. Yeah.
Well, most of the time I've actually heard that term was from female. Talking about other females, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's
she's my hoe.
That's a thing. That's a thing.
That seems quite American. Like, I know that Nicki Minaj used to say quite a lot.
I mean,
It's educated.
it's the reclamation of the term, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
Great philosopher, Nicki Minaj. Yeah.
No, yeah. She's a stupid hoe.
It was a quote. It was a quote.
Yeah. She has a song that's called, I wasn't calling her a stupid hoe. She has a song that's called Stupid Hoe. Just so everyone knows. So don't have Nicki Minaj hounding me.
Okay, so we've rephrased this one. What inspires you creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
When there is something to be learned. If it's like a project that can either be kind of to do with acting as a craft or something much more important, just something to be learned. I think it's important that we grow. It's important for me, particularly. I feel like education's always been a massive part of my life. And I don't think acting's the kind of career in which you ever stop learning. So yeah. I think that's my answer.
So what would make you run away as fast as possible then?
Just when people don't care. Because when people don't care about what they're doing, I feel like you can so just tell. All you have to do is ask a few questions. Like it's happened to me before. You just ask a few questions and you can tell straight away they're just like, I don't know, yeah. It's just a bit rubbish. Yeah. And it's kind of like, if you don't care, then why should I?
That's similar to Laura's. Laura's one was arrogance in that context too.
Yeah.
I believe it was arrogance, right?
Yeah.
With the other scale of that, instead of not caring, like taking it too far in a way, like just being full of yourself.
Yeah. Not because you want to, because you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more ego though, rather than like arrogance with education.
It's also like, why are you trying? How are we meeting you at this stage in our careers if you just don't care? I'm like, how have they got this far up the ladder?
Oh, seriously.
Like, we're not at the bottom, but we're like, in like the sort of like lower middle tier area, you know, like just past school projects. We're now at student filmmakers and short film level sort of like plays. We're in that area, and to meet people at this stage, and you're like, why do you not care? It's like A, bizarre, and then 2, like so disheartening as well. It's like, why are we here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, tits. It is so underused and it's so underappreciated. Like I heard my friend one day just go, "Oh, tits." I think it's the first T. You can get really good. Oh, tits. You can get a really good kind of.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one before. That's great.
Oh, tits.
Oh, tits.
Just being in a situation. Tits, get out of there.
Oh, that's great.
Not now.
Awesome, yeah. Well, Paul Wilson was enculé, so you know.
Oh yeah, he went all French on her.
All right.
This one is coming out very soon after this one. What sound or noise do you like?
Okay, pretty much the entirety of the Palo Alto soundtrack. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm mad about soundtracks, so yeah.
The soundtrack is insane. It's, as far as I know, it was created for the film, so it isn't music that originally existed and was then compiled. But it's just amazing. And if you haven't seen the film, you definitely should.
Like some tracks in Highlander, which they were just like mind blown about. It's a kind of magic.
Oh, yeah.
Very kind of XX-ish.
I'll put it on the list for us to review somewhere.
love
It's a good one. It'd be nice to have another soundtrack movie as well to do.
What sound or noise do you dislike?
Oh, just anything loud and sudden. And I've always been the same. When I was like 2, I was terrified of the Hoover. And if the Hoover was coming out, I had to be sat on the bed or on the couch. And the moment that Hoover turned on, something just changed. And my body would go really stiff and I'd be like, watching this Hoover. Like, what is it? What's it doing? And it's totally carried through to my adult life. I used to be in an orchestra and I knew the piece was going to start, fortissimo. I knew it, but see when it happened. Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Horrible.
Molly was one of the people that hated that sound that me and Pash used to do as well.
It's
See, it's got to do it for the reaction on the camera.
It's disgusting.
I won't do it again, sorry.
What profession other than your own would you like to attend?
Easy, barrister.
Oh, okay.
My dad was a solicitor for like 37 years.
Oh, wow.
He's retired, by the way, not dead.
Clear that up.
Just in case. For 37 years, and my friend is nearly all trained up as a solicitor.
Wow, tough.
Yeah, man. And she was like, I think you've missed your calling, you know. And I was like, why? She was like, you love to argue. And I was like, yeah, I do. And she was like, there's this saying kind of in the legal profession that, let me get it right. So solicitors write the show and the advocates perform it. She was like, advocates are kind of like actors. And there is that same kind of, you need to be in the moment, you need to be able to kind of turn on a dime, you need to be able to come up with something, you need to be really, really alert. And yeah, I think I would have really liked to have been a barrister if acting hadn't ever entered my mind.
I could see that.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attend?
Just anything office jobby. anything mundane, no variety, in an office all day. Like, I know what I'm going to be doing a month from now. Just anything similar to that, I would just hate. I'd be climbing the walls.
Okay. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, tits.
Oh, Tess, she's here. I don't know, something like level 2 commencing. That'd be pretty good.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
If you were reincarnated as some other plant or animal, what would it be?
Oh,
Of course.
unicorn.
Unicorn. Yeah.
Was there ever any doubt?
No, not at all.
True.
Okay, so now we're getting into the bonus questions. That's the one because I guess now I send the question in advance, but those ones remain as bonus questions. Would you rather be
God.
the lead in a Suffragette 2 movie or have a pet unicorn?
That's rough, man.
I'm going to go with Suffragette too.
Career first. Career first.
I know, I'm a career gal.
Question number 2. Would you go on an escape game with us? Because we have this idea on a past guest from ACS. There is the bank heist, which requires 10 people. So we're trying to get a group from former ACS guest here.
I would absolutely love to.
Cool. So that's us at 5. We've got Emma, we've got Molly.
Excellent.
Awesome. I received this the other day. Well, our audio listeners won't like that very
on
much.
YouTube.
But yeah, the Escape book. Can you escape this book? So it's basically like those old books like You're the Hero book? Like you travels between chapters and things.
Oh, yeah.
Make your own story. I don't know how it was called in English, but basically, so you've got riddles, just like if it was in Escape Room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it sounded
that's
like
cool.
Yeah, you got 65 minutes to get out.
Oh, sweet.
God.
Yeah, it looked quite nice.
Quite an interesting idea. Do it in book form.
Yeah, they also have boxes.
Intriguing.
Boxes.
Yeah. They send boxes and everything. I think we can go into the plugin.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'll have a little sing, and then we'll all say where we're from. No, France, Scotland, England, and Scotland at the end, and then we go into it. It's plugin time. France,
Scotland.
England.
Scotland.
Go podcast rangers. Go podcast rangers. Mighty plugin podcast rangers. Go podcast rangers. Mighty plugin podcast rangers. So, Molly, are you? What?
What do I do? Sing. No, I'm kidding. We wouldn't do that to you.
Okay. Do you have any? Can our listeners go and see you on anything you're working on right now on stage, film, whatever?
Ooh. I'm in the midst of auditions and meetings right now. So I don't know. I don't know what I can say yet. But I am in a music video if you would like to have a gander over to YouTube or Vimeo.
It's very good.
Yeah, so it is Liar's Promise by Neon Waves. They're a Glasgow indie band. The film is shot by Alan Raffel, who we all know, who is very, very, very good at his job. And yeah, you can just YouTube that or go over onto Vimeo. He's got a Vimeo page with other work on it, which is amazing. So yeah, that is what I would say.
And I think we can also see you in Con Men for 2 seconds.
Yeah, blink and you'll miss me. I get my bag nicked.
I've seen it at last on the big screen, like in the.
I remember I wasn't even told, and I was just like, "It's Molly!"
Speaking of,
oh my God!
Speaking of those two Paul Wilson films, should we give our shout out for the person that got the competition? Because Leslie Brown on Instagram is in both.
Yes.
She's She's at the tape. I believe I met her actually when it was. I met her, and I can't remember the other actor's name, but he's in it as well. He's the guy that's in England in Con Men. Like he goes like the flatmate of Tom's character. Anyway,
there's
note.
Amir. Anyway,
no, it's not Amir. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's bad. Top of my head. She's in that. She's also the mother. I believe she's the mother in Isolani.
Who?
Leslie.
Oh.
Isn't Leslie the mom in Isolani?
Good question.
I think she is.
Cool.
I can't remember the character's name.
Yeah, shout out.
Oh,
Shout out,
God.
yeah.
Terrible, but yeah. Well done for getting the location day. Second person to get it right. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What?
I need to get ready.
Yeah, I think we're done, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
That's a joke.
so
Oh, my knee really hurts now.
well, we'll do all the signing and everything while you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again very much for listening. We're approaching 2,000.
Very close.
Yeah, in terms of episodes, everything like YouTube and everything. So that's great. So we were
Adam.
Anouk.
Yann and
Molly.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.